So it's almost like this particular audience, to some degree, symbolizes sort of an identity crisis for IT service providers. It's almost like, we are not too poor for the free idli sambar and cannot relate to the multi-billion dollar kind of product innovation and things like that. So we've been hearing a lot in the last 2 days about innovation. Probably a lot of us relate very easily to how innovation can apply to a product environment, something that's more tangible. I think the real challenges for many of us in this room who are probably here is because how does it even apply to an IT services type of a setup? We heard a lot of great examples from product companies out here who talked about local markets, Indian markets, and so on and so forth. Yet there is another group of IT service providers who are basically managing IT services for large companies, where there may be a market in India, there may not be a market in India. So a lot of questions about, innovation. First of all, what is innovation in IT services? Does it exist anymore? And if it does, radical or, a step-by-step approach. So what I wanted to do was actually, we wanted to break it down into a debate, hoping that, we wouldn't be this hungry. And also given the fact that we have to kind of wrap up the session in about 20 minutes, I'm going to try and first get some mind share from the folks here. Because I think a large part of it is going to be on experiences that we can kind of, get from. So what I'm going to do is, we'll do a rapid fire first. In a minute or less, what are your initial thoughts in terms of radical or incremental? Which is the way to go?
I think we are doing incremental innovation already. We are doing incremental innovation already in many spheres. We still have not uncovered that radical innovation yet, which will, take us to the next level. So that is what. So incremental innovation is necessary, but not a sufficient condition. And I think we need to continue on that path until we find that radical thought.
Maybe we try to understand what is this radical innovation about. Let's try to find some examples of that. Mobile internet, cloud technologies, autonomous driving. These are some examples which have disrupted the market in the recent past. This is actually a market phenomenon. It might have been started basically by an individual or a team or a company, but this is a market phenomenon which changes the market completely. But this is not sufficient. You need to have incremental innovation to build on these disruptive technologies, to realize these trends that are happening in the market, to get a good or a goods or services which can be sold to a customer, and we have to make money out of that. So disruptive technologies or innovations are happening in the market, but incremental innovation is important to realize them and to make money out of it.
Well, I'm gonna differ. Let me put it this way, right? 50 years ago, when you're running a company, it was very easy for you to identify who's your competitor, right? And I work for a Fortune 20 organization, and the first question when we're in a strategy discussion is, who's our competitor? Our competitor is not AT&T. Our competitor is not another large, it's the Comcast, it's the Skype, right? It's those people who have started innovating in a radical fashion, threatening very large organizations. We can take innumerous examples of how Encyclopedia Britannica went bust because they were just focusing on incremental innovation. So while incremental innovation is necessary for improvement, unless we are doing radical innovation, focusing on what the world is changing, right? And there's a famous word I'm going to say, when the rate of internal change is lesser than the rate of external change, the end is near, right? When your internal change does not exceed the external change, sooner or later, you're going to have to shut the shop.
So basically you're saying it's radical, not so much the incremental.
Yes.
Okay.
To each their own. I personally believe that innovation is something which has to be continuous. If you step back and look inside, each one of us wants to learn, each one of us wants to continue to add value to the place where we were, and each one of us wants to grow in our careers, and that word grow could have different meanings. It's critical that these three stay center of the plate for each one of us. And I therefore believe that innovation is pretty much something ongoing on an ongoing basis. Acceptance of some of them may be higher, it makes it radical. If acceptance is low, it is continuous.
Let's do a quick. Is there anybody in the room who believes that you are not innovating? Anybody? Okay, and
Point on it. I guess more often than not, innovation word itself in the industry is an abused word. I mean, what we call as a job, which is like, doing your job, day-to-day job, better practice, making ourselves better than yesterday, we start calling them as an innovation. So I can say, unless it has a differential value, unless it's very good, I would possibly not call it.
actually you're going to provoke me to actually probably not be able to finish it in 20 minutes. I was actually going to say that's a great point. Our definition of innovation seems to be a little weak, is what I hear. So therefore, not a single hand went up to say we don't innovate, but yet we are all attending a session as to whether it should be radical or continuous. But the point is, what according to you, Sriram, what's innovation? How would you define, or how does anybody lay their handle on saying, yeah, I am innovating and this is innovation? Is there a definition to this in the context of IT services?
Yeah, so if you can monetize what you're doing, whether it is radical or continuous innovation, into real dollar terms, and can come up with a formula for each of those innovations and add up and say how it adds business value, I think that is the missing piece that is not giving us the radical transformation that we need.
What are your views?
Basically, innovation is realizing an idea, making it into a product or a service, and then making money out of it.
Okay, I'm going to take that and twist it around a little bit. Puneet, we are all already in the business of making money. How much more monetization can you do, and what is innovation? Does it change? Does the definition change because your industry segment is already financial?
I actually disagree with what Sriram said. I don't believe monetization is necessarily a correct benchmark for what innovation is, because I can take an invention done by somebody else and just in my own firm, which was not doing things in a particular way, I can do it, and I'll have half the population saying, oh my God, I didn't know we could do this. Now, a very simple thing, when we started off, recently we started that you can do password resets based on your voice imprint. So you don't need to, call a help desk or do anything else. Is it a new innovation in the world? No, it's not. Voice recognition and doing all of that very much exists. Is it innovative within my world? Within JP Morgan Chase, it's extremely innovative. And people are really surprised. Oh, wow, we never thought we could do this now. So I can actually call up, pick up a sentence, it authenticates, and my password reset, it says, okay, now enter your new password. So it's a relative term. It could even be the deployment of something in a new environment, thereby adding more value to that environment.
Okay. Now, how many of us in this room manage centers or are responsible for running operations which is less than 300? Anybody? 300 to 500? How many less than 1,000? I think the reason I'm kind of going to the show of hands is it almost always seems like innovation and the possibility and opportunities for innovation are much higher in bigger organizations. So it's always that the smaller organizations seem stifled. So the question I have is, when you look at it from an IT services standpoint, does size really matter in terms of how much you can innovate and how far you can take your innovation?
If I may, yeah. So I work for an organization that has 250,000 employees. Okay, and the constant battle that we have internally is we are not able to innovate as much as smaller organizations do, right? Facebook was not by a 250,000 organization, and so was when Larry Page started Google. They were definitely not large. So I don't think size matters. And I'm not questioning that a large organization, that GE, has been able to innovate. So it's not about the size, but it's really about what's in the mind. And I want to kind of differentiate between innovation and continuous process improvement. And I think what this gentleman quoted here, would qualify as a continuous process improvement. Execution excellence can never be a strategy. If you're not good at something, I'm going to quote Howard Schultz here, for an idea to be successful, it doesn't have to be original, right? One of the most popular sports in the world, or the most monetized sports in the world today, is the IPL. It was not an original idea. They just took the whole idea of EPL and recooked it to what is available here. Now, would you call that innovation? I would say absolutely yes. Lalit Modi innovated the concept of how sports is played. Now, the question again is monetization important? The answer is no. What is important in innovation is enhancing user experience. I'm going to connect that to IT services today. The biggest paranoid that we have today in IT, if I may take a minute, is how do we measure ourselves? And a lot of times I meet engineers measuring how many equipment did I stand up? You know, what's my MIPS? What is the latency on my network? What is the latency on my uptime of my equipment? And I would qualify, even if all this, it's an operation success, patient dead. Because we don't measure user experience. We don't innovate the way user experience is measured. We don't measure any of those parameters that actually impact the way we can enhance. And if you've seen, Lalit Modi innovated the way sports is presented, from a lethargic to a highly entertaining equipment. And that's what innovation is about.
So I'm going to take that and ask you a question, Swami. Bosch, automotive, all that. There's nothing sexy about automotive, at least in the way or the nature of the work that you do in terms of IT services and things like that. But if you were to now take that and say, it's all about presentation, it's all about user experience, do you have any examples of what something like this you have done in terms of how somebody can take this whole user experience thing and take it into IT services to bring on something that's more innovative for the user?
Yeah. I'll give you two examples. One is an example of a Bosch entity, not coming from Bangalore. They're actually a call center. A call center is usually associated with getting calls or answering calls and trying to sell an insurance or a credit card or things like that. What they did was, to go up the value chain, they went to the automotive business divisions, tried to get some embedded devices, hardware, software. They put it on some cars, and as a call center, they sold a service to the cars and said, here you have an emergency call, a E call, or an I call, or a B call, breakdown call or information call. And it was a call center operation, but they had an embedded device in it, they had an IT in it, there was an infrastructure, there was a analysis machine, there was input going, there was an output coming. They had to match this data, and then they had to respond to this call. When a call center can do it, why not an IT company? Another example in IT, we have been doing RFID based supply chain. So when you're able to tag every product that Bosch is manufacturing with an RFID, so when it is coming from the supplier vendors, or it is going to the customer, or being transported through logistics, this RFID is able to track and communicate across the different companies, and we are able to reduce the overall inventory or the supply chain and be able to respond extremely fast and also reduce costs thereby. So we call ourselves in our company as supply chain people and not IT people. So this is an example for me for innovation.
So I want to for a minute kind of take that, and I think that's a question here. If I were to take out the example and say, who really originated the ideas? Was it IT that originated the idea, or was it business that came back and said, hey IT, this is a great idea, can you help me do it for me? Where did the idea originate from?
For me, it's about teamwork. The IT people, and there should not be a line between IT and business. They have to sit together in the table. IT has to understand business and business has to understand IT, and each one has to challenge the other. And when they're challenging the other person, then the ideas are coming out.
So can I just react one thing? Because one of the things which it's important for us to look at is innovation from the eyes of the creator or innovation from the eyes of the consumer of that
Absolutely.
value and service. And I think we need to look at innovation from the eyes of the consumer of the service. For them, it has to be innovative. It could be as much innovation as I do internally, but if not monetize in a true sense, but if I can't add business value in some way to some part of my business, then it is not innovation. Even if I put patents on it, even if I do other stuff, if it doesn't help me get a better revenue, be number 1 or 2 or 3 in my industry, better customer satisfaction, then that really isn't innovation. So we should look at innovation from the viewpoint of the consumer, of the services or product or whatever.
There are two things that you kind of brought up. One is in terms of patents. A lot of the times, and I think a lot of the sessions that we also have been hearing in the last 24 hours in the year, I think a lot of the product kind of setup and organization seem to have something more tangible saying number of patents. And I think IT services kind of has a little bit of a hard time relating to that. Because what patents do you file in IT services? So I think quantification of innovation or the impact of innovation seems like a challenge. So two questions related to that to the audience. Help me around here. I know everybody's hungry. If not fully, half elbow will do. How many of you believe you have a seat at the table where decisions are made? How many of you believe you don't have a seat at the table? The rest of you are hungry. Okay. Well, even within that, I think there was just a few hands that went up in terms of, I have a seat at the table. So I want to kind of, take that and put a two-part question. So let's say I do have a seat at the table. The next thing is, how seriously am I taken?
Absolutely.
Although I have a seat at the table. So Sriram, is there anything that you can share in terms of, with respect, you have a seat at the table. How do you now start leveraging that seat at the table and make impactful inputs in terms of how IT and IT service innovation can be beneficial?
Yeah, so in any industry, I think mainly we should, like Puneet said, if you think from a consumer standpoint and from a business value standpoint, if we cannot talk the language of business, then whether you have a seat at the table or not is irrelevant. I think it is easier for IT people to learn that jargon rather than expecting business to learn IT. And that is the transformation that each one of us have to do. And once we do that, I think we will see more and more continuous improvement or incremental improvements that we are doing translate into at least 1 or 2 radical transformations.
Yes, so in case you did not notice, I raised my hands for both questions. And the only reason why I said is whether you have a seat at the table or you don't, the question is who decides, right? Who decides whether or not we have a seat at the table where decisions are taken, right? And radical innovations can never happen. Now, if you look at the way IT has engaged with business, it has almost always been an after fact. And I'm going back to what Ganesh said in the initial discussion. A lot of companies find it difficult to go from level 1 to level 2 to level 3 and 4. They get stuck at 1 and 2. And I think the companies that cannot leverage the relationship between IT and business, where you're always seen as a provider and business is always seen as a receiver, there is very little scope for innovation. So the key is, even if you have a seat at the table, what is the seat that you have? And the only key to success is to either be sitting at the table as a peer and to be sitting at the table as a partner. So the question that goes back is, who decides or who empowers us to be a peer or a partner? And for all of you that think, this is my personal view, that it's the CEO, my answer is no. There's a little switch here that is possibly off, right? So we just have to turn it on to say accountability and authority have to coexist. If I am willing to take accountability for my decision and stand by it, by God, we will get the seat, right? And by God, people will listen. So the question really is, we have to, and this is something that our CEO says, invite yourself to the table. You're not going to get invited, right? Invite yourself to the table, and as long as we are showing accountability and ownership for our actions, we will have a say in what it goes. So going back to that point, how do you, a lot of companies that find it difficult to transition from one step to the other, it's on us to go take that next step and self-invite, show the accountability, and then be able to drive the decisions.
Strongly agree, really. It's about value we add to that table. Yes, I agree, we should invite ourselves. We always need to understand we are never at a table because of the fact that we are holding a particular position. If we take that assumption, we are going to not succeed. What we need to do is how do we add, and this is what I keep telling people in GICs, very senior leaders who are sitting at global tables. You got the door opened to sit at the table because of your position. But if you don't continuously add value and behave in a boundaryless manner at that table, you're not going to retain the seat at that table, or people will not come to you for help and solutions where you can actually demonstrate you're innovative.